From the Alvin and Rosalie Sarachek studio, PBS Kansas presents Kansas Week.
Kansas lawmakers wrap up their work for the year, sort of, this week, cramming a whole lot of work into the last few days, from crime bills dealing with juvenile justice and fentanyl to overriding the governor's veto over and over and over again. But one veto stood strong, leading to yet another tax relief plan. Will this be the one that gets the governor's approval? That's what we're talking about right now on Kansas Week. This is Kansas Week, and I'm your host, Pilar Pedraza. We begin today with a look at the latest fight over how to lower your taxes. Although lawmakers and the governor agree on almost everything, it's that last little bit of disagreement that's been holding up tax relief for Kansans. And there's not much hope for this latest plan surviving, all of which points to a probable special session. Kansas lawmakers approved a sixth, slightly smaller package of tax cuts shortly before adjourning the 2024 legislative session for good early Wednesday morning. Republican leaders spent Tuesday afternoon and evening revising one last tax bill after they couldn't muster the majority necessary in the Senate on Monday to override Kelly's veto of a bill approved earlier this month that would have cut taxes by $1.56 billion over the next 3 years. The latest version of the big tax bill, one of four measures cutting taxes, would save taxpayers $1.46 billion over the next 3 years. But it still would cost the state more than Kelly thinks we can afford. She asked lawmakers to keep any tax cuts to no more than $430 million a year as of 2029 in order to keep the state away from a projected budget shortfall. None of the packages sent to her this year have done that, even though the last two have had heavy bipartisan support.
It is truly becoming ridiculous. If you stood out here and watched the vote in the House, 108 folks voted in favor. We've had as high as 123 vote in favor of a tax bill. So who's out of step?
Wednesday afternoon, the governor's chief of staff told the KSN Capitol Bureau Governor Kelly will veto the tax plan. She will call the legislature back into legislative session if this is the tax plan sent to her desk. Something we expect to see in the next few weeks. So what does this mean for you? Here to dig into that, we have State Representative Nick Hoheisel, a Wichita Republican, and State Representative Casey O'Habison, a Wichita Democrat. Thank you both so much for being here. Thank you. I feel like I should have a little bell and go ding, 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 ding. Okay, at it. We have talked about this so many times. Yep. There have been so many different versions. What is different this time? Is anything different this time?
Yeah, certainly. So we've been having discussions on tax relief with Kansans all session. We've had a number of plans that we've passed out of the House, some of them with a bipartisan majority, a couple of them actually unanimous. And unfortunately, they just never got over the finish line. The governor objected to one of them because it had the single rate in. We came to the table, we compromised, we got rid of the single rate, we went to dual rate. The governor objected to another one because it was too expensive. We compromised, we met her in the middle, and we reduced the fiscal note on it. And again, the tax bill passed out unanimously. That one went to the governor's desk and she vetoed. As far as I know, and I've done research and looked back, I can't find any other time that something passed a chamber, either the House or Senate, unanimously, only to get vetoed by the governor. We've tried and we've tried and we've tried to meet the governor in the middle and get a common sense bipartisan solution for tax relief to Kansans. And every time the governor has moved the goalpost, and that's what she's doing again. We are $3 million off her projected 2029 fiscal hit. $3 million more than what she wanted to spend in 2029. That's all that's stopping this comprehensive bipartisan tax plan to become law. So I know Casey probably feels a tad bit differently, but Casey can say Casey's voted with us on some of these tax relief plans.
I was part of, you talk about bipartisanship. I was part of the one of the votes that actually voted for the tax cut that passed the House. But remember, everything you said was correct. But remember, when we got to the Senate had a different version, right? And when we got to the Senate, we had to go into conference committee, and they had to iron their differences out. We passed it, and we sent it to the governor. Now, remember, let's be fair. The governor did say that she had to wait to see what the estimates were before she could actually see if she was going to sign it or if she was going to veto the bill. Now, her plan has always been that, look, she doesn't want to put the fiscal of our state in a bad place whereby 3 to 5 years from now we'll be in the red. And she's been very clear. Now, with respect to this particular plan that came out, it looks like that did the same. That did that in terms of we're going to be, in the red down the road. And we've been through the brownback tax experiment. We've been through that. We saw what happened right here in Wichita. USC 259 had to make some cuts. Our surrounding school districts had to make some cuts. Social services had to get cut. And that's something that the governor was like, no, she wasn't feeling comfortable, signing this particular tax bill. So that's why she vetoed it. Now, yes, we came back after she vetoed it. We had our good friend, our chairman on the taxation committee, Chairman Adam Smith, got together with his people, and on the Senate side got together. They tried to come up with another plan, but it was still off the projections of what the governor wanted. So she looks like she's going to veto this one again. So she has made it very clear that in order for us to have a tax cut, it has to be something that we can afford, something that we have to make sure that we have money in the bank just in case there's a recession or there's something, projections are not meeting estimates. We have money for schools, we have money for infrastructure, we have money for social services. I mean, in your district and in my district, we don't want services cut, just because we gave tax cuts to, people that typically don't really need it, So that's the reason, that's the position that the governor has taken. And I support the governor. I see her vision. I think we can do better in the legislature. We can actually pass tax cuts that will actually benefit those that really need it, which is those that are in the lower brackets compared to those that are on the upper tier.
So if I can respond a couple of things on that. The governor's estimate in 2029, yes, we are in the red. $3 million off of what the governor projected in her tax plan in 2029. This tax plan is just $3 million over that. Now, while we're in the red in 2029, that's also with a $2 billion rainy day fund that we still have. That's just in the red on as far as our surplus now. Then we would have a $2 billion rainy day fund still to utilize in 2029. Now, this tax package that's on the governor's desk now, it passed out with 28 of 51 Democrats voting in favor of. The majority of the governor's party in the legislature voted yes on this tax package. They believe it. I would encourage everybody to go to the ranking Democrat on House Tax Committee, Tom Sawyer's Facebook page, where he highlights all the good that's in this bill. And with all due respect to my friend Representative Al Hobson, this tax plan does help the poor. This eliminates taxes on the bottom bracket. Anybody that makes under $25,000 would not pay taxes under this plan.
And I totally agree.
And
Nick, I totally agree. There were some good things in that tax. I don't disagree with you. I mean, come on, we buddies, right?
No, and I know we're almost there.
But the bottom line is there were a lot of things that were in it that was totally unacceptable. And you have to understand, we cannot afford to jeopardize our future. Now, you talk about being $2 billion after 2029. But remember, you have to realize that these are projections. I mean, anything that happened in 2027, anything can happen in 2028, or even 2026 with respect to our physical health. So we have to be cautious as to how we can't. No one can predict what could happen in the future. We could have a natural disaster. We could have anything, and that's what the governor is trying to avoid. Whereby we have to face significant cuts if something was to happen in the future, or in 2026, where she won't be able to run again. Her predecessor coming in, whether it's a Democrat or it's a Republican, I think it's going to be a Democrat, but will have a good financial foundation to actually continue running the state or leading the state in the right direction. Yeah. So that is the reason why. So you're absolutely right. There are good things in the tax bill, but there's also bad things that.
I truly believe this tax bill does accomplish that, though.
Okay, I'm going to let that be the last word on the tax bill because we are having some technical difficulties with Casey's chair. We're going to take a look at our next story while we get this fixed. While lawmakers were waiting for the chance to vote on the latest tax compromise, some decided to take a chance on bringing the Chiefs, or Royals, into Kansas. Kansas lawmakers say last month's failure of Question 1 in Kansas City, Missouri, which would have allowed the extension of a sales tax there to construct a new Royals ballpark and renovate Arrowhead Stadium, gives the state of Kansas a chance to be on the map for professional sports. The stadium, or stadiums, would be funded by using star bonds, which provide financing without needing citizen approval or imposing new taxes. The projects would be financed through future sales tax revenue. Many lawmakers see now as a chance to attract both of Kansas City's professional sports teams in the 4 major leagues over the state line. But lawmakers failed to pass the bill before leaving for home. That doesn't mean the issue is dead, though. If there's a special session, they expect to get back to work on plans. A star bond expert in Kansas City says the idea is risky because 2 new stadiums would cost about $250 million a year to pay off. But the sales tax would only generate about a third of that, putting the state's general fund on the line. So I got the chair fixed.
Now.
Now let's see if we can fix this Chiefs-Royals issue. Yes. And this is one I think that, Casey, you are fully in support of. You love the Chiefs.
Yeah, oh yeah, we both love the Chiefs.
My question is, how much support is there really in the State House for this plan?
Oh, so I've had the opportunity to be involved in some of the meetings and discussions with this proposal, and I say there's broad support, and it's bipartisan, and it's in both chambers, and it's amongst folks from the conservative bin and the liberal bin. Obviously, we need to be cautious. We need to be good stewards to taxpayers, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to taxpayers. So we need to make sure any plan we pass is a good deal for the taxpayers. However, I believe with the utilization of star bonds, amongst other things, that we can get there and we can offer a package that is competitive, if even more competitive, to whatever Missouri is going to offer the Chiefs and or the Royals to stay. This is a generational opportunity for Kansas. And I think it would be a disservice to our state if we didn't at least explore and have conversations on how we can make this a reality.
I get it. Nick is my friend. You know, this is something. This is an issue that we agree on, and I think that there is bipartisan support in the House right now to see what we can do to build a stadium, in Kansas City. I personally would like to see the Chiefs move here to Wichita, so but I don't know if that will happen. But on a serious note, I think that there is support. We can actually offer a package that is very competitive to our neighboring state with respect to seeing we can build a stadium, in the Kansas City area. Again, leave the Chiefs where they belong there in Kansas City. Of course, that's their base, and we're doing everything we can, on the State House, and I think there's a lot of bipartisan support. I support Nick on that.
A lot of bipartisan support, but not 100%. I have already spoken with some lawmakers who do not like this idea either because they don't like using star bonds. Or they don't think we should be using state funds at all to attract businesses.
Not everyone is going to be on the same page on this. Of course, you're going to have a lot of difference of opinion, but at least there is a consensus that we can do something, to bring the Chiefs on our side of the border. Again, to put something competitive to our neighboring friends. So, you're absolutely right. I mean, it could be other things, and it's all about what can we do to compromise with some of our colleagues that disagree with that concept? Yeah,
and I've heard some of those opinions as well, and have had conversations with them. And again, if it's a special session that we get called to and we're able to work on this during the special session, if not next year, I think that there are ways we can kind of qualm some of those concerns and make sure there are guardrails for Kansas taxpayers in place for this package.
So there's definitely a time limit on getting something like this done, but it sounds like it doesn't necessarily have to be during a special session. It could wait till 2025.
It could, but I would fully expect if we're back for a special session that those conversations will ramp up in a very serious way.
And I concur with what Nick just said.
Okay. Well, lawmakers also wrapped up a flurry of other bills they've been working on, many of which will impact you. Among the many bills passed in the frenzied final days of the session are 3 crime bills that would allow Kansans to seek potentially life-saving drug overdose treatment without fear of arrest, expand the parameters for teenagers held in state custody, and increase penalties for fentanyl-related crimes. These changes come as Kansans across the state are dealing with an increase in youth violence and fentanyl-related poisonings. Another bill would give incentives to filmmaking companies to bring their projects to Kansas. Supporters say it's needed for the Kansas film industry to compete with other states, And this legislation would work as a kind of tax return for the film companies.
The more they invest in the local economy, the more they invest in our local hires, our local crew, the more percentage they get. So it's really great for them.
Then there's Baines Law, inspired by the death of a Wichita area canine officer strangled by a suspect running from police. Baines Law increases penalties for inflicting harm on law enforcement animals, including dogs and horses. Governor Kelly had vetoed the bill, but both the House and Senate overrode her with comfortable supermajorities. They also overrode her veto this year on a line item in the budget that allocated more than $15 million to send the Kansas National Guard to Texas to help with the border crisis. However, she doesn't have to spend that money. As the commander-in-chief of the Guard, Kelly will decide if the Guard heads south or not. And my next question coming out of that is, what did we leave out? I do want to mention one that I know I left out, which is SB 500, that's Senator Alethea Faust-Godot's bill that would expand who is eligible for restricted driver's licenses in an effort to help solve the suspended driver's license problem, help more folks get those suspended license fees and fines paid off so they can get back on the road legally. That's one she's been working on for a very long time, a result of an investigation I was involved in. What else? What other major or minor bills that you think are important that maybe we didn't get in that list?
So I would concur with Senator Faust-Godot's bill. She's worked on that for years, suspend driver's license, with our good friend, former Representative Gail Finney. And I'm thankful that Senator Faust-Godot has continued that fight and has been able to get this across. Suspended driver's license, highlighted in your report, were an issue here in Sedgwick County. I believe at one point we had half of the state's suspended driver's license right here in Sedgwick County. I know a lot of organizations, the Wichita Chamber, AFP, ACLU, and others groups got together in a bipartisan way and wanted to fix that. So I'm thankful for Faust-Godot's work on that. One that wasn't highlighted here was the veto override on capping of the IDD wait list. That was a big thing, and we overrode that very comfortably with a bipartisan majority.
Okay, explain that, because I just had no idea what you're talking about.
It's just, it simply caps the numbers of folks on the IDD wait list and allows us to utilize more funds to accomplish getting folks off that list. This was a baffling veto. Even my friends on the Democratic side of the aisle were kind of questioning this veto, and a majority of them voted with us to override it. So that's a huge one. The IDD wait list it's extraordinarily long. It's extremely too long, and we need to do everything we can to address it.
And IDD, that's
intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Yes.
And I your report, I also want to say that I concur with, Senator Faust-Godot has done a lot with respect to restricted driver's license, and she's done a lot of fight together with our former colleague, Gail Finney. One other bill that did get through was the civil asset forfeiture.
Yes. Yep.
That's something that Representative Gail Finney, she started way back, and we were able to get it through, which had a lot of support, and I'm grateful that we were able to get it done this year. We also worked on it when we were serving on judiciary together. We heard it, all of that. So I'm very grateful for that. Another bill that did get through was the labor law, the workers' compensation. That was huge. I mean, there's been something that has been on kind of like in the pipeline for a number of years, and we were able to get that through. With bipartisan support. So I'm very grateful to my friends on the Republican side to work with the governor with respect to that. Now, I disagree with my good friend Nick with respect to the IDD, because we're talking about those with development disabilities. Put in a cap. Of course, this is why we need to, as citizens, we need to be looking out for our fellow citizens. I mean, to put a cap on it, just to me, it was not right. I think that now that we have the surplus you're talking about, I think we need to have more money to help those that have this particular that are on the waiver list as much as we can. So I did vote to sustain the governor's veto, but of course it got overridden. So that's just the nature of it. Yeah. But again, I wanted the cap to be removed because we need to get more people. We shouldn't, just because the list is filled up and more people are trying to get on, all of a sudden because there's a cap they can't get on. And now that we have a surplus. I think we need to do more to help
Now-
some of
now,
these people.
and-
So that's where our disagreement comes in.
And I will say on that, there was a great story today. The IDD advocates organization that work with IDD folks strongly wanted this veto overridden. There's and it pains me to mention this. There's a story in the Kansas Reflector today from IDD advocates expressing their thankfulness for this veto being overridden, so they were in favor of that. One thing I do want to highlight in your package is all the work we've done this session on fentanyl. That whole package, we were able to strengthen penalties for possession and folks pushing fentanyl, this poison, into our streets. Obviously, in 2022, we had over 300 overdose deaths here in Sedgwick County, which is major. But the other piece in there that I worked on was the Good Samaritan bill. And we were able to pass that with unanimous in both the House and the Senate. Kansas was one of 2 states without a Good Samaritan bill for drug overdoses. This allows individuals, if they're using drugs together, one undergoes a health emergency, an overdose, the other one can call 911 and get assistance there without the fear of being prosecuted for simple possession of the drug or the drug paraphernalia. And it allows the individual, if you're overdosing by yourself, you can call 911 without fear of you yourself being prosecuted. Again, Kansas is one of 2 states. It was Kansas and Wyoming that did not have this on the books for drug overdoses, and we were able to pass that this year. I was thankful for my co-sponsors and all the work we were able to get that done.
Okay, so quickly, what didn't make it over the finish line that you wish had?
I wish we could have done more this year on medical marijuana. I wish we could have had an actual discussion in both chambers on medical marijuana. Obviously, that did not come to fruition this year. I'm hopeful next year we can come back and we can have a common sense, sit down, comprehensive conversation on medical marijuana. We've seen now the feds are planning to reschedule.
Classifies it.
To, I believe, class 3, I want to say,
like
schedule 2 or schedule 3. So I think the time is right for Kansas to seriously have that discussion.
I agree. I mean, medical marijuana, of course, they did have a hearing in the Senate, then of course in the House there wasn't any movement per se. So I agree with Representative Hoheisel. This is something that didn't get through that should have at least gotten a hearing but did not. One thing that I was disappointed about, of course, is no surprise, is Medicaid expansion. Of course, this is something that is needed not only here in our region but throughout the state that will help our hospitals through here in our region. Of course, we still have over 150,000 people that do not have health insurance, and by implementing Medicaid expansion, that talk about the number of jobs, talking about the supporting our doctors and medical professionals is going to be huge. So hopefully, we never know. Next year we may get to see it, and maybe I know that our makeup is going to be different. So a lot of our colleagues are retiring this year, so you never know who's going to, if it's your side of the aisle or my side, we could pick up seats. So you never know.
All right, that's a debate I think that's not going away in Kansas for a while. Well, finally today, we turn from the state to the city of Wichita, where leaders are considering a plan to require microchips in pets. KAKE's Jocelyn Schiffertucker takes a look.
This sweet girl was brought into the Wichita Animal Shelter Wednesday afternoon. They scanned her for a microchip, but there wasn't one.
Nothing.
Every day, there are about 15 dogs and 6 cats taken into the shelter. Right now, it's overflowing with 187 animals total. Of that, only 12 dogs have microchips.
What will happen with her is she'll be here we have to hold her for 3 business days.
But if she had had a chip, then they would have.
We'd be taking her home right now.
That's why the city of Wichita is looking at making it mandatory for people to get their dogs and cats chipped to help get your fur baby back to you if they get out.
Nobody expects their pet to go missing. That's why you get microchips. It's a preventative measure. It's something that can help exponentially when an animal gets lost.
A microchip is registered to a code connected to your address. This way, if your pet gets lost, they can scan it and find who they belong to.
And that's what would tie back to any owner.
Lieutenant Derek Purcell with the Wichita Police Department says this is the best thing to help keep animals out of the shelter, as long as the information registered on the chip is up to date.
In essence, it helps us divert the intakes from the shelter. What should come to the shelter is just the lost or stray that's looking for their owners.
Some people are against microchipping their pets, saying it's too expensive. But Jordan Bonnie Eunice with the Kansas Humane Society says it's a small price to pay to keep your pet safe.
Wichita Animal Services on their website, they do it for $15. It's not expensive.
In Northeast Wichita, Jocelyn Schiffertucker, KAKE News on your side.
So this is an interesting topic, and part of the reason why I wanted to discuss it is because it's one way of trying to solve what's becoming kind of a statewide problem, which is shelters that are overflowing with lost and abandoned pets. I mean, we've had the stories, I don't know how many times, from the Kansas Humane Society, Caring Hands Humane Society. We've got other smaller ones now throughout the state that are starting to say they're having the same problems, where they've got so many coming in, they can't find homes for them. And a lot of folks saying that's probably connected to the economy.
Yeah, so, this story is interesting to me. I'm a pet owner. We have a dog and 2 cats that I'm not always thrilled with having. But my daughter gets what my daughter wants. They're all microchipped. It's a great thing. I highly encourage anybody to seek out and get their pets microchipped. However, I do have a issue with a government entity requiring or forcing or mandating that happen. I would prefer the city of Wichita highlight the free programs to get your pet microchipped, or the low cost programs. Do some advertising, social media advertising on that. I would rather them go that route than putting a mandate and forcing folks to get their pets microchipped. I believe that's out of bounds. That's an overstep, an overreach by our city government. And half the time I never know what they're doing anyways or what they're thinking. But that's another conversation for another day.
Well, I agree with Representative Heisel. I think it's a good thing, to have it. Should we mandate it? I think it should be left to the individual pet owner, if they want to do it or not. So that's where I stand.
But I do concur. I know during COVID, especially in coming out of COVID, a lot of folks, while we're in COVID and we had these lockdowns, they were adopting pets, they were keeping pets. And as soon as we came out of the lockdown, the Humane Society seen a sudden surge of animals coming in. I believe adopting animals is a great thing. That's how we got our pets. I highly encourage everybody to look into that. But I don't think this is the answer to the lost dogs and cats and microchipping. And, the burden of changing addresses. We have folks that change addresses consistently and going in and updating their addresses and stuff. I don't think that's a workable solution.
Yeah. Well, I personally have got 2 dogs, 3 cats. They're all microchipped. I wouldn't have the faintest idea how to go about changing the addresses.
No.
And we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much to both of you, Nick and Casey, for joining me. We'd also like to thank our news partners at KSN News, the Wichita Eagle, and Cake News for sharing their materials with us. We hope you've found our discussion helpful. We'd love to continue it with you on social media. Just look for Pilar Pedraza TV or PBS Kansas. We're on most social media platforms. For now, stay safe and have a great week.